thank you very much for coming to the webinar today. My name, in case you don't know, is Graeme Pate. I am a lead educational developer, and my focus is on technology-enhanced teaching and learning. And so I'm not going to do a lot of intros. I'm just going to fire right into it because our time is all precious and we want to get going. So I'm going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes about some ways you could use polling in your teaching. Something very simple. What we don't want is you to be spending like an hour and a half trying to create something. We want something fast, quick, and simple. That's what we're looking for. So one of the things I want to start off by saying is we're going to focus on how you could use polling in a formative assessment kind of way. So we're not looking at using polling for grading, for trying to get marks on things. It's just more a case of using it so that it's anonymous. Students will feel more engaged with it. It's an opportunity for students to reflect on their learning, and in some cases, an opportunity for the instructor to reflect on their teaching. So we're not going to get into things with grades and all that. We're just going to focus on self-reflection and move from there. Now, one of the things I like about using it as a formative assessment is it can be anonymous. So now, because of that, you're avoiding all the issues and the complications we have regarding using CCIDs with third-party software. If you're not familiar with some of the recommendations/regulations around using third-party software, i.e. software that is not officially supported by IST, there is a link. I'm going to copy and paste it in the chat for you. Those people who are watching the video afterwards, it'll be in the description below. And this link will take you to one of our CTL pages. And near the bottom of that, you'll see a sentence which reads something like, what if I'm using third-party software or non-supported IST software? And there's some information in there about some of the things that you need to be thinking about if you are doing that. So using PollEverywhere or Socrative or Mentimeter, all these things are not supported by the universities directly. So you need to be aware of some of the issues about that. And one of them is about using CCIDs. So if it's anonymous, because we're using it formatively for reflection, then that solves the problem. So that's something we're thinking about. So with that little preamble out of the way, I'm going to talk about 4 ways to use polling. And for this example, I'm going to use PollEverywhere, but equally we could be using Mentimeter or Socrative. Most of these things will work. These ideas I have will work for any of them. So the first way I've already kind of spoken about, which is about gauging student learning. So one of the things that I did when I was teaching at the University of Glasgow I was in education. For those of you who don't know, I was lecturing in the education department and teaching undergraduate students and postgraduate students who are going to be going out to be teachers, usually in elementary/primary schools. So one of the things that I would do in my child development lectures was, it was quite in-depth for a first-year undergraduate course. They were really heavy stuff. So during my lectures, I would stop every 10 minutes or so, or at a natural conceptual break, as I would call it. You're teaching something for an hour in a lecture, and maybe the first 10 minutes, you've explained something, and then you stop. You've come to an end. That's the time I would use this particular idea to gauge how well the students have taken in what I've said. Are they confident about what I'm doing? So here is the screen that I would show in my lecture, or again, I do it online like this. How confident are you in your how confident are you in your learning so far? So I've spoken for 10 minutes. How confident do you feel about what I've said? Does it make sense to you? If you go to this address at the top, pollev.com/agpate, you can actually vote. You can actually do it right now if you want to. Do it on your phone, do it on your computer, and you can vote. You can say, well, how confident do I feel about what Graeme has said so far? Does it make sense to me? Am I following along, or have I completely lost the plot? One would hope at this point that if you're doing this, I'm going to get 4 or 5 stars. You're still with me. I haven't lost you yet, I hope. And I can look at the responses and I can see them coming in. So good. Most people are going, yeah, I get it. I'm with you. I'm all right. Now, of course, doing this every 10 minutes or at a natural break only takes 30 seconds because students get very fast at doing it because they're waiting for it. And of course, the big question then is, well, hold on, what happens if I get 2 stars and 1 star? A lot of students doing that. And this is why this is very good, because it also helps you to reflect on your teaching. Because it's not uncommon to get 2/3 of the way through a lecture, and then you're really getting into the meat of it, and you lose them. You go, okay. And you know that now you're doing this on purpose. I can see it all moving, and so can you. So you get 2/3 of the way through a lecture, and you're really in the meat of it, and you lost some students. So you ask them, okay, how are you doing so far? You're following along. And all of a sudden, in the last 10 minutes, you see there's a change. You get lots of 2s or 1s. That's an opportunity for you to say, okay, right, the last 10 minutes, I lost you. So I have a choice now. I can continue and leave you behind, or I can stop and say, okay, clearly I lost you in the last 10 minutes because 10 minutes ago I did this and you were all saying it was fine. So let me rewind for 10 minutes and explain it a different way. Now, it might mean it might mean you don't get to the end of your lecture because you've just repeated only 10 minutes. But what it does do is it allows the students to go, wow, that was very responsive of our lecturer. And now I've listened to it again and now I get it. So it really demonstrates a responsiveness, an immediate responsiveness if they get stuck. Okay, so that's something worth thinking about. So that's one way of doing that. And I like that because I can see the bars moving. And honestly, I've tried lots of different ways. What I like about this is I can keep this going all the time because you'll notice if you're doing it, you can change your answer. So what I tried, and it is a challenge, but I had a little iPad next to me on my podium when I was doing this live, and I could see the bars moving just like I can now. So if I'm lecturing and I'm getting to a concept and all of a sudden I'm getting a lot of 2 and 1 stars coming up, I know, oh, okay, I'm losing some of you. And I can make decisions, I make a professional decision about how I'm going to manage that. A very similar one to that, I'm going to jump to the next screen, is this. And if you're using the PollEverywhere, you'll see it will change. It's the very same thing, it's just in a different format. So in this case, you just click on the face that indicates how you feel. So I can see one person, some of you are giving me the kind of 4 out of 5, the happy face. And again, it's the same thing, it's just a different visual image, that's all. So it's just a personal preference. Okay? And you can see them all popping. And yes, you can even click outside. The nice thing about this is you can do half measures. You can say, well, I kind of get it. There you go. Someone put a 3.5. You see that? So you can, this kind of gives you a bit more flexibility. I've explained how you could use this as a way to gauge, for the students to gauge their own learning and their own self-reflection, and also an opportunity for you as the instructor to gauge how your lesson is going, and then you can make decisions what to do. Does that make sense so far? Now is the time to do your happy face and let me know, does that make sense? Are you with me? Now, you might get 1 or 2 people that are saying, no, sad face, you've lost me. That's okay. And at that point, you can say to the students, if I've really lost you, the majority seem to have got it, but if you are struggling, please contact me, contact the TA, email me afterwards, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. And it also means that you know to be prepared for that. If I've got 1 person saying a sad face, I'm expecting to get 1 email. And if I don't, well, that's on the student, but you've made that offer that you'll help them, or the TA will, or whatever. Or you can say, if you're really struggling with this, review pages blank, blank, review this link, et cetera, et cetera. Very simple thing to do. Like I said, you do it every 10 minutes or so throughout your lecture, and it takes all of 15 seconds. Or you just keep it running the whole time and you keep an eye on it. So I find that is something I've used a lot. And for those of you who've come to my webinars before, particularly before COVID, you'll have seen this, especially live, all the time. Another way is very similar to that, which is called Clickable Image. So I'm going to show that example. And it's another way of just engaging with the students using an image. So you download an image. So here I have, based on what you've just learned, click on the affected area. Now I know that I'm looking for the navicular. Okay, we're talking about the navicular in this class. So before we start, let's make sure you know where that is. So could you please click on the navicular? And let's just see if anyone knows where that is, because I didn't. I had to look it up. No cheating, no looking it up. So again, this is an opportunity for students just to click on the picture, and it'll pop up and with those little arrows again. The nice thing is I can go from image, so no one knows the answer, and I can say, show me the image. Okay. 1 person has it correct so far. I'm guessing that they are in sciences. And if I'm wrong, please tell me. I just had to look this up. I think this part here is the navicular. I think that's correct. If I'm wrong, then tell me now. So that's a very simple thing to do. just to, again, to make sure the students are paying attention. So in this case, I used the X-ray of a foot, but it could be in dentistry, use it for teeth, biology, etc. It could be looking at a cell, looking at a microorganism to be able to identify different aspects of it. So it's just a very simple thing to do, either at the beginning of a lecture or maybe halfway through, or at the end, just to confirm what they've learned. It doesn't take very long, but it just helps the students to focus. So another thing that we can do is to, and this is my favorite one, is voting on the best response. Now, before I explain this in more detail, before I give you an example, I'm going to give you an example from my own real world. So I was teaching, as I said, at the University of Glasgow, child development, and this child development course was 4 semesters long. They started it in the first semester of first year, and it ran for 4 semesters until the end of their second year. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I wanted the students, because they were going to be education students, they're going to be teaching, I wanted them to get very good at giving feedback to others, because in this child development course, they were going to do a lot of discussion and a lot of presentations. I wanted them to be able to give good feedback. So the very first week of term, year 1 undergraduate child development course, I gave them a task. They were all sitting in groups of 4. And I said, one of you will be A, one will be B, one will be C, one will be D. And I gave all the A's a paper to read for the next week. And all the B's got a different one, all the C's got a different one, and so on. And I told them I wanted them to come in, having read the paper. It was a very simple paper. And I wanted them to give an opinion which says, what did you like about it? What did you want to learn more about? And what were you not sure about? That was it, an overview. And they had 5 minutes to do that. So the next week they came, and because they were first week students, they were all keen to do it. So they all came prepared. And I said to all the A's, because they were all sitting in groups of 4, write A's. I want you to tell the B's, C's, and D's what you did. Don't look at your notes. I want you if you've read it, you should know it. Just do it. Just talk about it for 5 minutes. And they did that. So then I said to the B's, C's, and D's, I want you to give them feedback. But instead of just verbally giving them feedback, I want you to do a poll. I want you to give me the feedback in a poll. And in your groups, just think about a code. So start your response with a code. So maybe one group you're going to call yourself Minnie Mouse. One group you're going to call yourself, Battlestar Galactica. I don't know. Whatever it is, start your response with, Dear Battlestar Galactica, blah, 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 blah. Do your response. And they did that. And I used this particular aspect on PollEverywhere because what it allows you to do is it allows the responses to be voted on. So all these students gave feedback, and some of the feedback was, as you would expect, that was good. Some of it was all right. And some of it was, I liked what you said. No, it wasn't particularly strong feedback. But there was always 1 or 2 that went that little bit more to say, I really liked what you said because. So I was showing all these responses, and I said to the students, I want you to look at all these responses. I want you to vote on the response that you think is the best example of feedback. And of course they did. And the ones that were the best example of feedback floated to the top because they were the number 1, 2, 3. So I said to my students, well, why are those the top 3? What makes them better than the other ones? And they would say, well, it's because there was an explanation as to why. I went, yeah, okay. So when you're giving feedback, it's really good to say, I like this, and then provide an example. Okay, so think about that. B's, it's your turn. So the B's did it to the A's, C's, and D's. And again, the A's, C's, and D's gave feedback. And the feedback that came up this time was much better. And so I said, okay, now let's vote for the top 3 again. And lo and behold, we picked 3 that had even more, which was something like, I liked what you said because, however, it would have been nice if you had blank. So I said, okay, well, how come that one's the top vote? Why? And we talked about that. And then went to the C's and then the D's. Now, that whole thing took me about 45 minutes in week 2 of my class. And by the end of that 45 minutes, by the time we got to the D's, the feedback that they were giving to each other was equal to what my third-year students were doing. I could not believe how fast they grabbed that concept because I realized it wasn't me doing any teaching. I was just going, hey, how come that's the best one? And then kind of tweaking them a little bit. And it was incredible. I'm still in awe of how well that worked. So I'm going to show you an example of this and how you can upvote responses. So a TA has asked you for advice about 2 students in the first year undergraduate class they teach. There are 25 students in the class. They are constantly whispering to each other during the class and often appear bored. What advice would you give? That's the question. It's now available for you. And I'd like you to spend a couple of minutes and actually answer the question. Just type a couple of sentences. How would you respond? And as you do that on your phone or on your computer, you'll see thumbs up and thumbs down appearing probably on the left-hand side for each response. And you can vote up. Please don't vote down. There's no need for that. I could have turned that part off, but I didn't. But so think about how you'd respond, and then look at the responses. We'll give you a minute or two, and then we'll vote on which response you like the best. And as you can see on my screen, you can see these bars moving to the right and to the left. So the bars on the right are the votes, positive votes, and the votes on the left are the negative votes. But you can see that there are some which are clearly getting the most votes. And in a class situation, I would not just say, oh, that's good and move on. I'd want to dig a little bit deeper. Say, okay, why? Why did these come to the top? And that is a teachable moment, which is interesting because that's a phrase in one of the responses here. So doing this as maybe a precursor to a breakout room, or maybe post breakout room. So they have a discussion, they come back, and then their group provides the response. So you only have maybe 5 or 6 responses rather than 15 or 20 or 30. And then everyone can vote on it and discuss it. So this is, to me, a really powerful way to engage students, getting opinions, voting on the opinions, and then discussing it. But the important part is not to just do the vote and move on. The important part is to actually start analyzing that and discussing it and asking questions and digging a bit deeper. So thank you for participating. Now, of course, there we have we have 2 or 3 which are coming up at the top. And if we had more time, if this was a longer webinar, I would dig a bit deeper and say, let's talk about this some more and find out why and and how would we move on from there. The other thing to talk about is a word cloud. A very easy way to get a one-word answer. So I've given an example here. If you were given a whole week to work with CTL without any interruption, what is the top thing you'd want to learn? So you have a whole week with me, for example. I'm not sure you'd want that, but okay. You have a whole week with me, no interruptions. We've gone off somewhere to get, a bite to eat, and we're just going to be on our own in a quiet room for a whole week. What would you want to learn? So a word cloud allows you to write 1 or 2 word answers, and the more a word is repeated, the larger the word becomes and becomes more prominent. So feel free to give that a go. So here's the word cloud that I asked you to look, and you can see it's still moving as it's still live. So what I see is that of all the things that people would come and ask me about or ask someone at CTL about if they had a whole week, what I'm seeing the most of is engagement. How do you engage people? How to use eClass? That's more an IST thing, but okay, I'll go with it. How do you engage? Polls. So this is very helpful to kind of get an overview of what are the things that are really jumping out. What do people really ask for? What do they need? So you could be asking a question with everyone, such as in your class, okay, folks, we're at midterm. And we've done 4 subjects, so 4 main concepts. What's the concept that you're most challenged with that you want some more help with, for example? It's good for, like I said, 1 or 2 words, not very good if you want them to write sentences, but it gives you an overview of things. I've talked about 4 things in this particular webinette. I talked about gauging student learning. I've talked about using a clickable image with the foot. We talked about voting on the responses, the thumb up, thumb down, and we talked about a word cloud. So which of these ideas interests you the most? Interesting. That helps me so that when I'm working on future webinettes, I may do something and dig a bit deeper, or even to be able to create more material for our website. So very helpful. So again, polling isn't just about you getting information about the students. It could be the students getting information about themselves. How well do I know this? And it could also be information as the teacher for me, as in, what am I learning about myself? How is my pacing going? How is this teaching going? And being able to respond to that either exactly in the moment, like the first example, when I'm doing happy faces or I'm doing marks out of 5 for how you understand things, or it could be after the input. Like now I can take a look at this and go, this is helpful for me. So I know where to focus my attention for next time. How confident do you feel about implementing something you've learned today in this webinette? And this is not only helping me, it's also helping you. So if you are doing sad face, like red, yellow, orange. If you're in that area, you may go, I'm interested, but I'm still not confident enough. And that's absolutely fine. So the question then is, what are you going to do about it? And I hope what you might do is ask for a consultation with me or one of my colleagues, and we'll be more than happy to walk you through it, help you set it up, and give you some good practice ideas and so on. That's what we're here to do. But that's the webinette pretty much over. So thank you very much for your time. If you have to leave, I appreciate you spending some time with me. If you want to stay around and answer some questions or ask some questions, you're very welcome to do so.